So this video is going to be in defense of things like perfect glass cannon, perfect focus, basically something that you would consider to be a meta chess talent. Okay, I have been wrestling with this video all day, just re-editing and re-deleting and just trying to go over it again and again and again. Different scripts, all over the place, just in an attempt to not sound like a utterly ridiculous, preachy, elitist cunt. And I'm not sure if it's going to work. But this is going to be the final take, because I've been at this for 27 hours on this one video, and I'm kind of over it. So this is going to be the final take, and what you make of it is going to be entirely up to you. I have honestly tried. Now, with all that in mind, I respect people's decisions and opinions to play the way in which they wish to play. You are free to make up your own decisions and play how you wish to play. That is perfectly fine, but some people come out with utterly ridiculous arguments in defense of their own falsehoods or shortcomings. And this all stems from doing my best in slot series. One example, I'm not going to name anyone or put any screenshots up of the comments, I'm just going to walk through them, but some of you will potentially have seen them because I know other people have replied to these as well and also done varying commenting. But one of my favourite ones is, I love it when people play meta because me and my hybrid build always end up saving them or doing more DPS, and all meta players do is go down and die. First things first, it is mathematically impossible for a hybrid build to outperform a meta DPS build. There's a reason it's called a meta DPS build, and it is simply just because it is the best at doing that amount of damage. A hybrid build cannot compete with it at all. Not going to happen. Now, to highlight this, I'm going to use an old friend of mine, Monster Hunter. I know a lot of people like to think I'm elitist, but in Division I'm actually pretty chill. In Monster Hunter though, it's a different story. In the top left we have the meta heroic spread heavy bowgun, and in the bottom right we have the highest damage that we're able to get without using heroics. And I'm aware it's probably going to be quite difficult to pay attention to two things at the same time, but on the bottom right I go straight in, I start trying to do damage and I'm hitting the monster. With the top left I run around for a bit. I have to activate heroics. The way heroics works is I get a 40% amp as long as I am below 35% health. Could argue glass cannon. Now, despite the fact that, as I said, the bottom right, I'm shooting the monster, I'm doing damage, I've only just started doing that on the top left now with the build. What one do you think is going to kill the monster quicker? What one do you think does largely a lot more damage? Now, I'm aware this isn't Division, but it does translate quite well. You see, the point of this is one, that if you're playing solo, you have to know how to play with your build. The argument, which I get a lot, is I do more damage with Obliterate than Perfect Glass Cannon because I end up spending more time in cover, having to heal and other things, and just trying to avoid taking damage with Perfect Glass Cannon. This doesn't actually mean you'll be doing more with Obliterate. It just means you're playing badly. Bitter pill to swallow, I'm aware, but if at any point if this monster hits me again, I'm probably going to die. Risk versus reward. But the damage difference that I get is more than worth the risk. The monster doesn't stand up, I'm able to do stupendously more damage. The fight is over more quickly, and because I'm able to keep that monster in position due to the amount of damage that I'm doing, the fight takes less time and I'm actually at less risk. Despite the fact that on the bottom right build, I'm able to utilise my full health bar. I can move around a lot more. My damage is still pretty good, but it's nowhere near the top one. Due to the fact that I'm not able to do that damage to control the monster to move it around, I actually find the fight more difficult. I genuinely struggled to do the fight with what you would consider to be a easier build to use with more survivability. It was honestly a harder fight, and it took over a minute longer. And the backing behind this is just the simple fact of I've put in the time and the effort to learn how to do these things. I'm aware it's just a game and we play for fun. That's all well and good. But arguments like I'm able to do more with my hybrid build and meta players go down and I do more with Obliterate than I do Glass Cannon, because with Glass Cannon I end up having to hide in a corner, are completely irrelevant. The meta build is now done. I've got a minute left to go on this fight with a non-meta build genuinely struggling. Now, one thing that a lot of people don't actually get is in PvE, your survivability increases dramatically when there's less things shooting you. Kind of a given, really. Dead things don't shoot back unless you're playing reanimated, in which case, different story. But the whole argument of my hybrid build saves meta players and I'm always having to pick them up because they're always dying, you'll actually probably most likely find that the reason they're dying is because your build is doing fuck all. Essentially, they're trying to carry you and they probably don't have the experience or know-how on how to carry you because your build is not holding up your end of the bargain of being the fourth player in that team, which tends to lead people to doing probably dumb choices or overextending, or just that enemy should have died a long time ago and it hasn't because you can't deal with it. Anyway, this is the build I was running for the non-meta. It's got all of the right skills: attack boost, crit chance, crit damage, weakness exploit, which is an increase in crit against weak areas, agitator, which gives you more damage and more crit when the monster gets angry. And despite the fact that we lose quite a bit of that when we put our meta heavy bowgun build on, the fact of the matter is that heroics level 7 right there where my mouse is basically beats out the rest of the previous build by itself. It is a 40% amp on all of my damage, whether it crits or not. And all I've got to do is be below 35% health. Now this actually also then leads into a point I made on another video, and that is the math is a dick. So here we are. Heroics increases attack and defense when health drops to 35% or lower. While active, increases attack power by 40% and increases defense by 150 points. Now obviously, while active, this bonus is amazing. 40% more damage, more defense, great. The issue that a lot of people are going to have is in order to get this, they have to be below 35% health, which not a lot of people are going to be comfortable doing or have the skill to utilize. This doesn't detract from the simple fact that heroics in this game, in Monster Hunter, is the meta. It is the highest damage output you're able to get on all of your damage. It is the meta. Whether you're able to use it or not is irrelevant to the conversation. It doesn't matter whether you know or are able to use heroics effectively. It is the meta, which also leads into Glass Cannon. It is irrelevant as to whether you think or feel whether you do more with XYZ over Glass Cannon, minus obviously perfect focus. Glass Cannon is going to be one of the most powerful chess pieces. In some instances it is best in slot, in some instances it is the meta. You can argue this all you want. It doesn't change the fact that it is a very, very powerful chest, and if you have an actual problem with it, it's not so much that the chest is bad or worthless or useless, it's more you are the problem with it. You are not skilled enough to use it, not experienced enough to use it. Not trying hard. Maybe your positioning was off. Maybe your overall build doesn't complement glass cannon in its entirety. There are a plethora of reasons as to why an individual may be struggling with glass cannon or focus or headhunter or even obliterate, and it most likely stems down to you are not experienced with that. I personally really suck with headhunter because my aim in hitting headshots consistently is terrible. I do not particularly like headhunter. Would I say it's a bad chess talent though? No, it's factually the most powerful piece in the game. There are entire builds made around just that one chess talent. I personally don't like it because I'm bad at hitting headshots. Doesn't mean that the chess talent is bad. However, so many people like to tell me that perfect glass cannon is bad or terrible, or it's not best in slot because you have to equate this in or that in. All the things they like adding in are variables that they themselves control, and if they're not that well versed in the uses of perfect glass cannon, it then becomes a falsified claim. You're adding your own personal bias to it, which is one of the reasons why I use math. Math doesn't have a bias. It doesn't tell me whether I should or shouldn't like something. It tells me this is what this is capable of. Do it. Whether or not I'm capable of doing what the math is telling me that this build should be capable of is a different story altogether. That is what we call a skill issue. A player error. Stood up too quick, not all the enemies were dead, took a sniper to the face while running perfect glass cannon, you die. Glass cannon shit, no, you fucked up, you stood up too quick. Now, on the standing up notion, another one I get is people complaining that you can't use perfect glass cannon while running and gunning. This to me is kind of idiotic because the game is classed and it's designed as such as a cover-to-cover looter-shooter. There is a rather intricate yet annoying cover system designed into this game. It is very clearly a core mechanic behind the combat of this game. So claiming you can't use things like perfect glass cannon for running and gunning is kind of like a duh moment. Like, of course you can't. That the game actually isn't designed for running and gunning. There's like maybe 2 gear sets that allow for such a thing, and even then they're not particularly that great and require complementary pieces to help bolster that effectiveness. And then when you fully build for running and gunning, the effectiveness of that compared to what would normally be considered a standard DPS build that utilises cover as their defensive barrier will always outperform you. Anyway, I've been that bitter pill. Have fun, good luck, don't die, it's bad for the health.